My dear devotees, thank you for your patience. We had a little technical difficulty. I had to restart my computer and set everything back up again. Welcome to all of you to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just near the English Channel, where we are in the process of trying to purify the atmosphere, the ether, by vibrating Shabda Brahma, Srila Prabhupada's transcendental literatures, which he said himself are meant to be the law books for the next 10,000 years. The world is bristling with confusion and conflict, and Srila Prabhupada made the statement that in future the historians will note how this movement saved the world in its darkest hour, and that darkest hour is on its way. But this is the good news. There is light, there's knowledge of how to live and within the laws of material nature, rather than trying to conquer the laws of material nature, which is not possible. So this hearing daily of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is changing hearts. I'm getting so much reciprocation from so many devotees, how they're actually understanding the books more clearly by having them read out loud, cover to cover, clearly. And we intend to keep this up as long as I can breathe in this body. Hare Krishna. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram, from Sri Krishna Lila Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami, who was the senior direct disciple of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who instructed Sanatana Goswami for 2 months straight, spent more time with him than anyone. And one of the results was this beautiful glorification of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Purāṇa, Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho, Kalidvandotitaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshakshadayate, Sarvada Savasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atinit chochatakada hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kantayokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 13th chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and Vidura has returned from pilgrimage and convinced with strong words Dhṛtarāṣṭra to leave home and search out self-realization. And this is where we start again at text 39. Maharaj Yudhishthir said, "O godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone, nor can I find my ascetic aunt, who is grief-stricken by the loss of all her sons." Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir, as a good soul and devotee of the Lord, was always conscious of the great loss of his aunt and her sufferings as an ascetic. An ascetic is never disturbed by all kinds of sufferings, and that makes him strong and determined on the path of spiritual progress. Queen Gandhari is a typical example of an ascetic because of her marvelous character in many trying situations. She was an ideal woman as mother, wife, and ascetic, and in the history of the world, such character in a woman is rarely found. Text 40. You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination. Thus addressed, the godly personality, Devarshi Narada, greatest of the philosopher of devotees, began to speak. Purport. So Narada Muni shows up just exactly when Dhṛtarāṣṭra and Gandhari left home without telling anybody, even his personal secretary Sanjaya. And Yudhishthira is lamenting, he doesn't know what happened. And who shows up? Narada Muni. He always shows up just at the right moment to let everyone know what's actually happening. The all-knowing Naradaji. Purport. There are different types of philosophers, and the greatest of all of them are those who have seen the personality of Godhead and have surrendered themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Amongst all such pure devotees of the Lord, Devarshi Narada is the chief, and therefore he has been described herein as the greatest of all philosopher devotees. Unless one has become a sufficiently learned philosopher by hearing the Vedanta philosophy from a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot be a learned philosopher devotee. One must be very faithful, learned, and renounced. Otherwise, one cannot be a pure devotee. A pure devotee of the Lord can give us direction towards the other end of nations. Devarshi Narada used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthir because the Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord. And the Devarshi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed. Text 41. Sri Narada said, "O pious king, do not lament for anyone, for everyone is under the control of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, all living beings and their leaders carry on worship to be well protected. It is He only who brings them together and disperses them." Purport. Every living being, either in this material world or in the spiritual world, is under the control of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Beginning from Brahmaji, the leader of this universe, down to the insignificant ant, all are abiding by the order of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the constitutional position of the living being is subordination under the control of the Lord. The foolish living being, especially man, artificially rebels against the law of the Supreme and thus becomes chastised as an asura or lawbreaker. By the order of the Supreme Lord, a living being is placed in a particular position and is again shifted from that place. Nobody can violate the order of the Supreme Lord or his authorized agents. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, Maharaj Yudhishthir, or in modern history, Napoleon, Akbar, Alexander, Gandhi, Subhash, and Nehru, all are servants of the Lord, and they are placed in and removed from their respective positions by the supreme will of the Lord. None of them is independent. Even though such men or leaders rebel so as not to recognize the supremacy of the Lord, they are put under still more rigorous laws of the material world by different miseries. Only the foolish man, therefore, says that there is no God. Maharaj Yudhishthir was being convinced of this naked truth because he was greatly overwhelmed by the sudden departure of his old uncles and aunt. Maharaj Dhṛtarāṣṭra was placed in that position according to his past deeds. He had already suffered or enjoyed the benefits accrued to him in the past, but due to his good luck, somehow or other, he had a good younger brother, Vidura, and by his instruction, he left to achieve salvation by closing all accounts in the material world. Ordinarily, one cannot change the course of one's due happiness and distress by plan. Everyone has to accept them as they come under the subtle arrangement of Kala, or invincible time. There is no use trying to counteract them. The best thing is therefore that one should endeavor to achieve salvation, and this prerogative is given only to man because of his developed condition of mental activities and intelligence. Only for man are there different Vedic instructions for attainment of salvation during the human form of existence. One who misuses this opportunity of advanced intelligence is verily condemned and put into different types of miseries, either in this present life or in the future. That is the way the Supreme controls everyone. Text 42. As a cow bound through the nose by a long rope is conditioned, so also human beings are bound by different Vedic injunctions and are conditioned to obey the orders of the Supreme. Purport. Every living being, whether a man or an animal or a bird, thinks that he is free by himself, but actually no one is free from the severe laws of the Lord. The laws of the Lord are severe because they cannot be disobeyed in any circumstance. The man-made laws may be evaded by cunning outlaws, but in the codes of the Supreme Lawmaker, there is not the slightest possibility of neglecting the laws. A slight change in the course of God-made law can bring about a massive danger to be faced by the lawbreaker. Such laws of the Supreme are generally known as the codes of religion under different conditions, but the principle of religion everywhere is one and the same, namely, to obey the orders of the Supreme God, the codes of religion. Disobedience to these codes is the condition of material existence. All living beings in the material world have taken up the risk of conditioned life by their own selection and are thus entrapped by the laws of material nature. The human form of life is meant for understanding this conditioned life and then becoming free from the clutches of material existence. And the only way to get out of the entanglement is to agree to obey the Supreme. But instead of becoming free from the clutches of Maya or illusion, foolish human beings become bound up by different nomenclatures, being designated as Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, Hindus, Mohammedans, Indians, Europeans, Americans, Chinese, and many others. And thus they carry out the orders of the Supreme Lord under the influence of respective scriptural or legislative injunctions. The statutory laws of the state are imperfect imitations of religious codes. The secular state or the godless state allows the citizens to break the laws of God, but restricts them from disobeying the laws of the state. The result is that the people in general suffer more by breaking the laws of God than they benefit by obeying the perfect imperfect laws made by man. Every man is imperfect by constitution, under the conditions of material existence, and there is not the least possibility that even the most materially advanced man can enact perfect legislation. On the other hand, there is no such imperfection in the laws of God. If leaders are educated in the laws of God, there is no necessity of a makeshift legislative council of aimless men. There is necessity of change in the makeshift laws of man, but there is no change in the God-made laws, because they are made perfect by the all-perfect personality of Godhead. The codes of religion, scriptural injunctions, are made by liberated representatives of God in consideration of different conditions of living, and by carrying out the orders of the Lord, the conditioned living beings gradually become free from the clutches of material existence. The factual position of the living being is, however, that he is the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. In his liberated state, he renders service to the Lord in transcendental love, and thus enjoys a life of full freedom, even sometimes on an equal level with the Lord, or sometimes more than the Lord. But in the conditioned material world, every living being wants to be the Lord of other living beings, and thus, by the illusion of Maya, this mentality of lording it over becomes a cause of further extension of conditional life. So in the material world, the living being is still more conditioned until he surrenders unto the Lord by reviving his original state of eternal servitorship. That is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita and all other recognized scriptures of the world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What a purport. Send this out to all the leaders of the world today. Text 43. As by the sweet will of a player, playthings are set up and dispersed, so by the supreme will of the Lord, men are brought together and separated. Purport. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the Supreme Will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as the localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 13:23, and therefore He knows everything of our therefore He knows everything of our activities in every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some particular place. A rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who came as the rich man's son deserved such a place, and therefore he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme, even if the child or the father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation. The same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player and his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of our own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied, but it is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the Supreme Will, and He is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions, but in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only, and no other. Therefore, the example of the player cited in this verse is quite appropriate, for the Supreme Will is absolutely free to do whatever He likes. And because He is all-perfect, there is no mistake in any of His actions or reactions. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita 9:30 and 31 that the Lord saves a pure devotee who is surrendered unto Him without reservation from all sorts of reactions to sins, and there is no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly He is not Himself bound by any action or reaction of His own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental to all laws. What a nice definition and explanation of God. Text 44. We started 15. 45. Okay. Text 44. Narada Muni is continuing to speak to Maharaj Yudhishthira. O King, in all circumstances, whether you consider the soul to be an eternal principle, or the material body to be perishable, or everything to exist in the impersonal absolute truth, or everything to be an inexplicable combination of matter and spirit, feelings of separation are due only to illusory affection and nothing more. Purport. The actual fact is that every living being is an individual part and parcel of the Supreme Being, and that his constitutional position is subordinate, cooperative service, either in his conditional material existence or in his liberated position of full knowledge and eternity. The living entity is eternally under the control of the Supreme Lord. But those who are not conversant with factual knowledge put forward many speculative propositions about the real position of the living entity. It is admitted, however, by all schools of philosophy that the living being is eternal, and that the covering body of the 5 material elements is perishable and temporary. The eternal living entity transmigrates from one material body to another by the law of karma, and material bodies are perishable by their fundamental structures. Therefore, there is nothing to be lamented in the case of the souls being transferred into another body, or the material bodies perishing at a certain stage. There are others also who believe in the merging of the spirit soul in the Supreme Spirit when it is uncovered by the material engagement, and there are others who do not believe in the existence of spirit or soul, but believe in tangible matter. In our daily experience, we find so many transformations of matter from one form to another, but we do not lament such changing features. In either of the above cases, the force of divine energy is uncheckable. No one has any hand in it, and thus there is no cause of grief. Narada Muni ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Text 45. Therefore, give up your anxiety due to ignorance of the self. You are now thinking of how they, who are helpless poor creatures, will exist without you. Purport. When we think of our kith and kin as being helpless and dependent on us, it is all due to ignorance. Every living creature is allowed all protection by the order of the Supreme Lord in terms of each one's acquired position in the world. The Lord is known as Bhuta Brit, one who gives protection to all living beings. One should discharge his duties only, for no one but the Supreme Lord can give protection to anyone else. This is explained more clearly in the following verse, text 46. This gross material body, made of 5 elements, is already under the control of eternal time, kala, action, karma, and the modes of material nature, guna. How then can it be already in the jaws of the serpent, protect others? How then can it, being already in the jaws of the serpent, protect others? Purport. The world's movements for freedom through political, economic, social, and cultural propaganda can do no benefit to anyone, for living beings are controlled by superior power. A conditioned living being is under the full control of material nature, represented by eternal time, and activities under the dictation of different modes of nature. There are 3 material modes of nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, one cannot see things as they are. The passionate and the ignorant cannot see things as they are. Therefore, a person who is passionate and ignorant cannot direct his activities on the right path. Only the man in the quality of goodness can help to a certain extent. Most persons are passionate and ignorant, and therefore their plans and projects can hardly do any good to others. Among the modes of nature is eternal time, which is called kala, because it changes the shape of everything in the material world. Even if we are able to do something temporarily beneficial, time will see that the good project is frustrated in course of time. The only thing possible to be done is to get rid of eternal time, Kala, which is compared to Kala Sarpa, or the cobra snake, whose bite is always lethal. No one can be saved from the bite of a cobra. The best remedy for getting out of the clutches of the cobra-like Kala, or its integrity, the modes of nature, is Bhakti Yoga, as it is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 14:26. The highest perfectional project of philanthropic activities is to engage everyone in the act of preaching Bhakti Yoga all over the world, because that alone can save the people from the control of Maya, or the material nature, represented by Kala, Karma, and Guna, as described above. The Bhagavad Gita 14:26 confirms this definitely. Text 47. This is a famous verse. I'll chant the Sanskrit. Ahastani sahastranam, ahastani sahastranam, apadani chatushpadam, palguni tatra mahatang, jivo jivasya jivanam. Those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those devoid of legs are prey for the four-legged. The weak are the subsistence of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. Purport. A systematic law of subsistence in the struggle for existence is there by the supreme will, and there is no escape for anyone by any amount of planning. The living beings who have come to the material world against the will of the Supreme Being are under the control of a supreme power called Maya Shakti, the deputed agent of the Lord. And this Daivi Maya is meant to pinch the conditioned souls by threefold miseries, one of which is explained here in this verse. The weak are the subsistence of the strong. No one is strong enough to protect himself from the onslaught of someone stronger. And by the will of the Lord, there are systematic categories of the weak, the stronger, and the strongest. There is nothing to be lamented if a tiger eats a weaker animal, including a man, because that is the law of the Supreme Lord. But although the law states that a human being must subsist on another living being, there is the law of good sense also. For the human being is meant to obey the laws of the scriptures. This is impossible for other animals. The human being is meant for self-realization, and for that purpose he is not to eat anything which is not first offered to the Lord. The Lord accepts from his devotee all kinds of food preparations made of vegetables, fruits, leaves, and grains. Fruits, leaves, and milk in different varieties can be offered to the Lord, and after the Lord accepts the foodstuff, the devotee can partake of the prasadam, by which all suffering in the struggle for existence will be gradually mitigated. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:26. Even those who are accustomed to eating animals can offer foodstuff, not to the Lord directly, but to an agent of the Lord, under certain conditions of religious rites. Injunctions of the scriptures are meant not to encourage the eaters of animals, but to restrict them by regulative principles. One living being is the source of subsistence for other. One living being is the source of subsistence for other, stronger living beings. No one should be very anxious for his subsistence in any circumstances, because there are living beings everywhere, and no living being starves for want of food at any place. Maharaj Yudhisthira is advised by Narada not to worry about his uncles suffering for want of food, for they could live on vegetables available in the jungles as prasadam of the Supreme Lord, and thus realize the path of salvation. Exploitation of the weaker living being by the stronger is the natural law of existence. There is always an attempt to devour the weak in different kingdoms of living beings. There is no possibility of checking this tendency by any artificial means under material conditions. It can be checked only by awakening the spiritual sense of the human being by practice of spiritual regulations. The spiritual regulative principles, however, do not allow a man to slaughter weaker animals on one side and teach others peaceful coexistence. If you do not allow the animals peaceful coexistence, how can you expect peaceful coexistence in human society? The blind leaders must therefore understand the Supreme Being and then try to implement the kingdom of God. The kingdom of God, or Rama Raja, is impossible without the awakening of God consciousness in the mass mind of the people of the world. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The mass distribution of these transcendental literatures, which was Prabhupada's plot in re-spiritualizing, to re-spiritualize the human society, Ki Jai. We'll stop our reading for tonight. Such powerful purports explaining Narada Muni's basic philosophy he's giving to Maharaj Yudhisthira, who, by the way, is an eternal servant of Krishna, liberated soul, eternal servant, eternal associate. Therefore the conclusion is, and he was the king of the world. Therefore the conclusion is, everyone needs the knowledge in these books. And we're so stubborn that Srila Prabhupada repeats the same thing, but in different words, turning phrases in different ways, so that we can get the idea thoroughly digested in our consciousness. So we can actually follow these instructions, apply them into our daily lives, our daily relationships, our daily work, our daily endeavors. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're stopping here. We'll start tomorrow at text 48. And I'm waiting with bated breath for the reflections of the assembled sages.
First is from Rati Manjari.
Hare Krishna. Rati, you are out of the bag every day lately. Good sign.
She says, Jai Guru Maharaj, please open up the valve of divine love by reciting this transcendental knowledge to us and to the world.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Thanks for reminding me. Hare Krishna.
And Sudevi Dasi says, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Sudevi Dasi. We hope you're safe and sound, peaceful, and in ecstatic love of Krishna.
And from Gopakanya.
Yes, Gopakanya.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, and all assembled sages. Happy Ekadashi to you all. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yes, and to you as well.
And from Jai Baladev.
Jai Baladev, how are things in Houston? Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada says, no living entity starves for want of food at any place. But we see people starving in Ethiopia and other places.
That's because of mismanagement of foolish leaders. It's not nature, not natural. They say that people are starving in India. You're just reading the news and just assuming that's what's happening, but actually, by nature, they're not starving. It's by mismanagement, by rascal leaders. These verses are meant to be applied in a general sense, the law of nature, laws of nature. The ones who break the laws of nature, and when a few people take more than they're allotted by the nature, then some people have to want. That's the law of nature. Hare Krishna. I think that there was a very clear description in those purports we just read, that when the living being breaks the laws of nature, then he causes a situation that is also under the control of time. That's true. That part of what you're saying is true. But it is not what Krishna actually wants. It's the material nature responding to the misbehavior of the living beings. But there's always enough food. They say that people are starving in India. Everywhere you go, there's food. Everywhere you go, there's food. You go to Govardhan, it looks poor. It looks like nothing. But nobody is going hungry in Govardhan. Nobody. There's more prasadam than you can eat. Hare Krishna.
And from Rati Manjari.
Yes, Rati. Hare Krishna.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Some of these purports of tonight were really astounding in how to the point they are. For example, in 1342, the secular state or the godless state allows the citizens to break the laws of God, but restricts them from disobeying the laws of the state. The result is that the people in general suffer more by breaking the laws of God than by obeying the imperfect laws made by man.
There you go.
Srila Prabhupada really says it as it is. Part of it we already know because we see it around us, and some of it we do not know because we never heard or understood it.
Yes, that's why we have to hear these books again and again and again. If we just hear these books again and again and again, even if we can't become learned scholars and pundits and such exalted persons, Prabhupada has given us this greatest gift of this knowledge, which if we just hear and accept, we will become more learned than all of these big philosopher people in the world, PhDs and Hare Krishna.
Paramohini Devidasi says Hare Krishna.
Paramohini, Hare Krishna.
And from Yadutama,
Haribo Yadutama.
Hare Krishna Gurudev, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Prabhupada. I really appreciated Prabhupada commenting that the modern governments make laws that are akin to real religious constructs. We are all just wanting to play Krishna in so many different forms.
Yes, that's true. Everything is a reflection of the spiritual world. What came into my mind was this answer that Prabhupada gave to this kind of puffed up journalist who was trying to catch Prabhupada in saying something that he could then publish. And he said, so you are Guru? And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, so that means you know everything? And Prabhupada said, yes. And then he said, how many windows are in the Empire State Building? And Prabhupada said, without hesitating, he said, how many drops of water are there in a mirage? Such a beautiful answer. The whole room just broke out in laughter. And this person was humiliated to the point where he couldn't even speak. Therefore, two things are condemned in the process of spiritual attainment or spiritual advancement, and that is blind following and absurd inquiries. Hare Krishna.
And from Krishnangi Mulder.
Krishnangi Mulder, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. What drew my attention was disharmony in human society when other living entities are neglected. How to turn that around seems a huge task, to shift the mentality, seeing how important it is to give the opportunity for many to read and hear Srila Prabhupada's books.
Yes, that's true, but in one sense time is against us, and in another sense time is on our side. It will take a long time, yes, but there's a long time for it to happen. It is already predestined. These books are going out by the millions every year, and some of them are being digested, and people are coming and joining to one degree or another. And those who just come in contact with the books, next lifetime they're a little more receptive, and then a little more receptive, next life a little more receptive. And at one point they'll get one of these books, they'll open it up, and they'll say, this is what I've been looking for all along. And it happens right now, right today. But we shouldn't think that we can plan it. We're following the instructions of a liberated soul, who is giving the method given to him by Krishna to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. And it is already a miracle how many people are chanting Hare Krishna in the world today, as opposed to 50 years ago, or 70 years ago. When I was growing up in Northern California, in America, nobody had ever heard of these things. Nobody. I never heard the word Krishna when I was growing up. Maybe some obscure scholar somewhere studying, comparative Indian religions or something might have said the word Krishna, but only in an academic sense. But now Srila Prabhupada, in just this many years, it's spread all over the world. It's a miracle. So it's not such a big task. And the persons who are breaking the laws of nature, causing such horrible conditions, like right now the whole world is on the edge of their seats to see whether Russia's going to, attack Ukraine and just cause a chaos everywhere. These things are going on because of all of the accumulated actions and reactions of all the conditioned human beings on this planet. And nature has a way, and time proves it. That's what war, pestilence, pandemics, they're all causing different degrees of suffering. And we just heard it. We just heard it in one of the purports. There's different degrees of suffering caused by reactions in material nature to the misbehavior of the conditioned souls. I'll tell you, and this is interesting. When I was in Spain, not long after I arrived there, the third letter that was left by a girl in Fatima, in Portugal, who apparently got a vision from Mother Mary and the Mother of Jesus Christ, and then wrote 3 letters and then sealed them. And there was all kinds of testing whether or not this was true or not. But anyway, whether it was true or not, there was a huge following that started. And many years, there was an instruction on each one of the envelopes. It was given to the Vatican, and they kept these envelopes. And they were supposed to be read out in different years. And I don't remember the years exactly, excuse me if I'm not completely correct historically. But the first one predicted World War I and other things. The second one predicted World War II and other things. And so they decided not to open the third one. But by this time there was such a festival in Fatima that there was such an uproar in the Catholic world that they were forced. Mm-hmm. So while I was there, they read it for in the Fatima festival. I think it was the Fatima festival. Not sure where or how. And the contents were there would be another world war, and that nuclear weapons would be used, and that the persons who were actually God conscious, they would be placed in certain places so they would not be so disturbed. And the fourth thing was that the priests of the Catholic Church have fallen from grace. Mm-hmm. That was in 1981 or 82. And look what happened. So many scandals in the Catholic Church for abuse by the priests. So many. Of course, it's everywhere. It's not, even in the beginning of our Gurukula, there were strange people who did strange things, evil things. It's everywhere. But I use that as an example because things are going on according to God's will, as we just heard, and this movement will increase, and it will be very prominent at some point in time. We don't know when that time is, but we know that it's going to happen, because Lord Chaitanya said it would. Hare Krishna.
From Rati Manjari.
Haribo Rati.
What especially occurred to me was the mix of the unrelenting way Srila Prabhupada speaks of the need to surrender to God and obey Him as an unnegotiable principle.
Yes.
Which some religions use to scare people. And simultaneously we can experience a glimpse of Srila Prabhupada's love for that Supreme Person, who is so deserving of our surrender, service, and love.
Yes, thank you very much. Very beautiful reflection. Thank you so much. We should all follow it. As Prabhupada said, the only solution is to get out of the control of material nature. And the only thing that can do that is pure devotional service to Krishna. Full surrender. Mixed devotional service will not get you there. It has to be pure, unalloyed. That's the goal of life. And Prabhupada, yes, Prabhupada was uncompromising. He never compromised the knowledge, he never compromised his principles. Thanks everyone, and please forgive me again for being late today, but my computer shut down and I had to set it back up again. And that took a little time, so I was late. Thank you so much, everyone. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samavira Bhakta Brinda ki jai. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Transcendental Literatures ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic. undaunting instruction on how to become actually free from the modes of nature, but not free from the loving care of God. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow.